the right man.
I love you so much.
What appealed to me about this story was that it wasn't about technology. It is a love story.
I don't believe that we're predetermined to relive our past.
It's a fiction of ideas, and it's a fiction of people.
What's happening here?
You found me.
You're being manipulated.
Don't leave me. Don't leave me.
That's not your wife. She's alive. Go back. You'll die here. I can't leave her.
Solaris is a planet that's been discovered, but that seems to have very unusual characteristics. Chris Kelvin is sent to try and recover what is basically an abandoned space mission because he happens to know one of the people on board, and their previous attempts to bring this crew back have failed.
Why not send in the security force?
We did.
And I go up there to basically see what's going on, and I get there and a lot of people are already dead or missing.
Of course, he has no idea what he's about to deal with. He has to come here and sort of unpeel the layers and try and figure out what's going on.
I could tell you what's happening.
All kinds of strange things start happening. You know, people start appearing, and everyone has these visitors.
Solaris is generating characters that it's pulling from their subconscious.
She just appears at night in his room and seduces him.
Will she come back?
Do you want her to?
The thing that I like about it is that all of the people that are involved are intelligent enough to know that these are visitors.
It is a mistake to become emotionally engaged with one of them.
She's alive.
She is not human.
They're bright enough to know what's going on and avoided it for as long as they can.
All of our obsessions, memories, fears are being physically manifested.
It knows more about yourself than you do.
Do you remember where we first saw each other?
On a train.
Any human being would fall prey to it. Any human being would be affected by it.
I love you so much.
My character gets sucked into the idea of, I get it, she doesn't exist, or she exists on a different plane, and I'm perfectly willing to sacrifice a little bit of reality for a while just to have a night with my wife again.
Kelvin is being given a second chance,
Don't blow it.
but it's a second chance that's heavily freighted with a lot of the burdens of the first chance, and a lot of the possibilities for failure are still there.
Where are you going?
I can't be here.
If I can solve the problem of this relationship with my wife, who is with me again, inexplicably, then maybe that'll provide a way out.
This isn't really a remake of the Tarkovsky film. It's a different adaptation of the underlying novel by Stanislaw Lem.
It just seemed to be about everything that I'm interested in personally.
When people ask me about Steven Soderbergh, I think of the director, the writer, the cinematographer, the editor, because those are the functions he's filling on Solaris.
I'm glad that he's not doing what we do, acting.
Here's a filmmaker who's at a point in his career when he doesn't really need to accept input from anybody, and yet he remains so open to any sort of ideas or suggestions that could make it better.
Collaboration, for example, is not a dirty word for him. A lot of directors don't even want you to change a comma in something they've written, and he's almost encourages it, you know.
He really allows them to sort of, to do their thing, and then is great at sort of, you know, shaping the performances.
He's into throwing stuff around, and on the last day of the shoot we're sort of doing a day of improvising, just seeing what comes out, and he'll, I guess, use it if he likes it.
Yeah.
It's more like doing a rehearsal for a play. It's very spontaneous and very creative, actually.
Steven wrote an incredibly demanding role that offers an actor absolutely nothing to hide behind. It's really a challenging piece. And George has delivered such a courageous performance. I think it's really going to amaze people. It's like nothing you've ever seen him do before.
I actually lobbied for this job. I sent him a letter and said I wanted to do it. He was talking to another actor, and he just finished the script. And I read it, sent him a letter and said, I don't know if I can do it, but I'd like to take a crack at it. Thank God the other actor passed.
It's so unlike anything he's ever done, and it's such a demanding part. It's extremely emotional.
Do you want to be here? Because I need help. I can't do this. I can't continue to do this on my own.
I've always had vast faith in George as an actor, and he's done some great stuff, but that isn't the type of character that you would immediately associate him with. And I think that it is to his credit that he saw the value in doing this character. It's to Steven's credit that he understood and knew George well enough to be able to trust him with this material.
He's really killingly funny. He's the funniest actor I've ever worked with. Between takes is doing various impersonations of anyone and everyone you choose to mention.
I reckon you want something to drink.
He can remember reams of dialogue from movies or from musicals. And he sort of gets up and does routines, and then the camera's rolling and boom, he's there. Absolutely 100%. I can't do that.
The way I figured, it's one less eaten.
Okay, lock it up. Here we go.
And we all got better shots with Viola now.
And roll sound.
George is kind of the central planet, and the moons that orbit around him are lesser known actors. This was critical, I think, for the casting of this film, because he wanted these to be real people, even down to the casting of Rhea with Natasha McElhone, which, you know, people will recognize her, but she's not a star in her own right. She may be after this.
Everything she'd done, I was like, I thought that girl's, she's really, you can't take your eyes off of her.
She reminded me of the sort of great European actresses of the 60s and 70s. Jean Moreau and Dominique Sanda and people like that. Smart, sexy, complicated women. Women, not girls, women.
When you want to get hitched. She's beautiful, but there's this really sad, sort of haunting thing about her. And once you have that automatically, then she doesn't have to play it.
Chris, I've got to talk to you.
We wanted somebody who wasn't going to bring some name brand recognition to that role and would allow the audience to sort of discover who her character was as the movie unfolds.
I was really having a tough time with Snow, picturing him. When I was writing it, it was Deborah Zane, our casting director, who said, I've been thinking about Jeremy Davies. And as soon as she said it, I thought, oh, there you go. I needed someone who could sort of generate a stratospherically weird performance.
I think he's just an interesting actor. He's one of those guys that I really, really love watching in films.
It's so fun to watch him interact with Viola and George and Natasha because he's just off on his own little planet. Viola Davis, I've worked with twice before. She has incredible integrity on screen. When she says something, you believe it.
That's one of those actresses you get in a scene with and you're just trying to hold on.
There's a sense that you might not win an argument with her, and I needed somebody that powerful.
I need you to come to Solярис, Chris.
Oh, Ulrich. He's very nice, Ulrich. I like him very much. He's very good. Basically, his character ends up by himself in one of these rooms, losing his mind. So actors would go on, take their video camera, go into a room, and just talk to the camera, and that was sort of their audition.
Our casting director said, I think you should look at this tape. So I put the tape in.
Maybe it's like a spider web waiting for something to show up.
He photographs his dog listening to him talk. It's a close-up of his dog with this really odd expression on his face as Ulrich does one of these monologues.
Never took even one shot of himself.
And something about like the way this guy's mind worked sold me on him, but I want to hang out with this guy.
Very rare that you get to work with actors like that, and very intimidating at times. I'm awake.
Yes.
This is not a film that is like any other film that you can go and see.
I think what's special about the material is that it's left for each individual to determine what Solярис is and what it means.
It's an actor's piece. It's the hardest thing I've ever done by far.
It's great. It's incredibly stimulating.
I'm a sucker for a great love story, and this film has at its core one of the most spectacular romances you can imagine.
This whole thing came about because a friend of mine who was working at Fox asked me one day, "Are you interested in science fiction?" And I said, sort of. A specific kind of science fiction I'm interested in, but I'm very particular.
Once we had acquired the novel, we had literally just sort of sat down and said, okay, now what do we want to do with this? You know, should I write it? Should we hire a writer? You know, how are we going to approach breaking this down? And we got a call that Stephen had always wanted to do this film. And it was like a godsend.
That's good? Yeah, we got to let it run.
It came via the studio that Stephen, having read, I guess, or heard that we had acquired the project, just wanted to make it. He was absolutely passionate about the material and wanted to meet with us to see if we had kind of a common vision for it.
What do I see here? Well, just this.
Just this, right?
Yeah. What I'm thinking is, if you do this and you turn, and through, you know, from there you can see the things, but what I'm going to do, I think, is play your reaction, not show what you're reacting to, and then cut in there. What I might do is pull the rear wall out and get our crane going so that I can bring him in, you know, and then drop down, and that's how you see the bodies instead of, I don't want to do it in a cut.
Stephen came to us and we had a meeting, and while we talked about the project, and Stephen had a very different visual tableau for the movie than we had ever envisioned developing the movie. He had the same themes throughout. And I think movies are ultimately about themes.
I actually lobbied for this job. I sent him a letter and said, he was talking to another actor. We just finished doing Ocean's 11, and he just finished the script. And I read it because it was over at the company, and I read it, and I called him, sent him a letter and said, I don't know if I can do it, but I'd like to take a crack at it.
Became a situation basically where he said, I'm ready to do this. I mean, as an actor, I'm ready to do it, and I want to do it, and I think it's good for me to do. And once he said that, I said, fantastic, then let's do it. My interest in Solярис was really driven by the ideas at the center of the book, which I tried to expand upon as best I could. Come be here. Do one of those. Marker?
What's really exciting about what Stephen does is every single film he does, he tries basically a completely different genre, you know, and this is one that's sort of a mixture of a bunch of them. But the one thing you will see as you watch the film, you'll take note of is how still it is. So it isn't a lot of great flashy action.
If you look up, you know, just before I pass you, that would be even just
so excited about the element of surprise when I see it, because I know I'm going to be surprised whatever Stephen does, because the whole process of making it has been, you know, quite mysterious, and Stephen has it all in his mind, and you know, one isn't necessarily privy to that, and I love that because it's quite freeing in a way.
Hey. There was no simple shot. Every shot in it had some element that kept it from being easy, whether it was a technical element or a performance thing. So it was all, they're just, every day I thought I'd get to something that would go quickly or easily, I was always foiled. I was purposefully trying to keep myself open to exploring it on the spot. and not trying to nail stuff down, because I didn't want to come in and tell the actors, okay, you're there and you say this and then you cross over there. And so I was trying to do my homework in terms of writing out or writing down how all these things should fit together. But you never know until you put it together.
Water on one, please.
Water 1 and 6.
1 and 6 water.
Okay, let's go.
And action.
The setup is sort of classical in the sense that George Clooney's character, Chris Kelvin, is sent to try and recover what is basically an abandoned space mission because he happens to know one of the people on board and their previous attempts to bring this crew back have failed.
He doesn't know what he's walking into. He's shown some tapes of some transmissions that have been sent down from Solaris, and it just looks like these people are you know, the wheels are coming off.
Hi, Chris. I'm sorry I'm not here to meet you. I still have a little time, and I want to tell you something. It would have been interesting to discuss.
The beauty of Solaris is that Solaris is not a planet. It's a planet-like object that is an intelligent organism. The moment he enters that station, you know that there is great jeopardy there. Now, you don't understand the nature of the jeopardy right away. You think that there could be anything. There could be a monster, there could be a murderer. It turns out that the jeopardy is to one's sanity.
I can't stay here.
What?
You should have told me.
It wouldn't have made any difference.
Really?
Well, I had to do it, Chris. I had to, you know that.
The dilemma that they're all confronting is that Solaris is generating characters that it's pulling from their subconscious or their past.
Daddy.
I mean, we're not even sure at times what Solaris has generated in the case of one character. We never get to find out.
She's a mirror that reflects part of your mind. You provide the formula.
She's alive.
She is not human.
But it knows more about yourself than you do. To see George literally be a different actor than I've ever seen him was really exciting. I mean, it was exciting to watch him just change.
Yeah, it's an actor's piece. It's, look, you know, hardest thing I've ever done by far, and scariest as an actor, because you sort of feel way out there on a limb. But you know, if you're going to do that, you do that with Steve.
If the people that George is interacting with aren't as strong as he is, then you don't have a movie.
She begged me, Kelvin.
Well, then the trick is, because there aren't very many characters, finding people who are really distinctive and really strong so that you feel the tension. Natasha McElhone is somebody actually that I'd sort of noticed and had my eye on since she did the Merchant Ivory film some years ago. Because it was such a crucial part, I had her come in and read with George.
I'll go with you.
No,
Yes, don't. No, please. Please. No, please don't.
It's okay.
She reminded me of the sort of great European actresses of the 60s and 70s. It was Deborah Zane, our casting director, who said one day, I've been thinking about Jeremy Davies. He's so unique. There's just nobody quite like him.
I wouldn't, no, she won't talk about it. And the thing is, I'm not even sure if it's a person.
Well, I knew for Jabarian that I wanted somebody that wasn't necessarily well known to American audiences. I got this tape from Ulrich. He photographs his dog listening to him talk. It's a close-up of his dog with this really odd expression on his face as Ulrich does one of these monologues.
I have come to hate it here. There's only one way out of its reach for us.
And something about like the way this guy's mind worked sold me on him. Viola Davis, I've worked with twice before.
Take the findings back to Earth.
What if they follow us back?
When I decided that I wanted to turn one of the characters in the script from a male to a female, I immediately thought of Viola because she's just so strong. Where to go with the design aspect of the movie was obviously the subject of a lot of discussion between myself and the producers, and Phil Messina, the production designer, and Elena Cananero, the costume designer, and me, the cameraman. We didn't want to be specific about how far in the future it was. Didn't want it to feel like it was the distant future.
We always knew we wanted to take sort of a realistic approach to what the ship would look like, as far as the spaces being small, sort of showing a lot of the workings of the ship. We actually looked at a lot of stuff from the International Space Station, and that was a lot of good inspiration because in the space station there's a lot of exposed, what we call gack. There's a lot of stuff kludged to the walls. You do see a lot of articulation in the structure, in the textures. There's sort of a lot going on with the ship, but it has an organization that all hopefully makes a lot of sense.
There's nothing you can really go out and buy per se, so everything has to be manufactured. So we have a warehouse where we have a staff shop, we have sculptors, the painters, welding shop. So one piece would take, say, like one rib in one of the corridors. First it would be drawn by the art department, then it would go to the sculptors who would sculpt the piece. Then the sculpted piece goes to the mold makers who make a mold of it. And then, because there's not just one piece, there would be like 100 of each one of those. And then it goes to the carpenters, we erect everything. And the first thing we did, we had to open up the stage floor for the core of the spaceship and go down 6 feet, pour concrete footers, put in retaining walls, and then that would be the hub. And then after that, we started with the core coming off of it, and then laid out for the radial corridor, which is this part down here. And that was said 7 weeks ago. We've had about approximately 175 people working on this. It's been 24-hour days, 6 days a week.
The bottom line is everybody wants it, you want it to look right, or at least right as you imagine it.
The planet itself was intended to be a character in the movie, and very subtly it needed to change over the course of the entire film, starting from sort of gentle, sort of dormant state, and then slowly throughout the film progressing into a violent fury. By the time you get to the end of the film, it's sort of chaos. I know Steven wanted the audience to ask questions about what was happening to the planet. Is it a supernatural event, or is it some sort of spiritual being? By everybody coming together, we all made something that we were very proud of.
When you have a spaceship like ours that has the amount of detail in it, we had to go to the next step, which is up to 4K resolution. So it's really a lot more data, a lot more pixels in terms of resolution. It's more resolution than actually the film is itself. By the time you composite those in, you really get the bang for your buck in terms of quality. We also worked on a sequence where the Rhea character has committed suicide and she comes back to life in front of everyone's eyes. So there was a creation of a wound from drinking some liquid oxygen, and quite graphic detail where the flesh was eaten through in her cheek and her neck. Kelvin character carries her back to the bedroom and puts her down on the bed, and we get a real close look at her regeneration, and she comes back to life. There's a train sequence where Kelvin's traveling on a train, and those were all done on a blue screen stage with backgrounds that were shot in Chicago. There's a lot of little things that Steven enjoys just polishing his movie. with us.
The exterior stuff for the train, that was one of my favorite things in this entire movie. We built a train, we put it on a rig, and we towed it around in the rain. Steven wanted to have a refrigerated area on the spaceship where, you know, bodies would be stored. But what was really interesting for us is as we were adding humidity to the air, we got this really cool looking mist coming out of the vents, which Steven really, really liked. So we decided to shoot like that.
This is not an action film. People need to know that going in. But that's not a fault. It's a very positive thing, because this is not a film that is like any other film that you can go and see in a theater. Not this year, not in the last 10 years, and probably not for the next 10 years. This is the different movie. This is science fiction the way science fiction used to be back in the 50s and the 60s especially, where it's a fiction of ideas, and it's a fiction of people. It's not about robots and lasers and all the things.
I'm not really interested in making a film about technology, what technology is going to be like a few decades from now. What appealed to me about this story was that it wasn't about that at all. I mean, it is a love story. It's the most ambitious movie I've attempted conceptually.